Does map size matter in Battletech? What is the impact? That's the tactica that we're going to explore in this Battletech vlog. So what is an average game of Battletech? Lots of ways to play the game, lots of tools, lots of tech. What's average, what's normal, what's standard is what you play with your regular gaming group. And for the Battletech group that I play with, being avid wargamers, our tables tend to be really, really big. Sometimes no hex map, or sometimes a gigantic hex map, size of a kitchen table, of a dining room table. The more terrain, the more tech, the more tools, the better. One of the things that I've noticed, though, if we talk about optimum or balance, sometimes there is an imbalance there. And if we think about kind of the pack-in for Battletech, can I say community standard, agree or disagree in the comments, that focus would be the hex map. Now, if I sidebar for a moment, we talked about the advantages from game design perspective of the hex map with the relation to Battletech. The range, there's no disputing the range. There's no disputing cover. Terrain, there's no disputing facing. You can calculate everything you need. Think of it as like a battle computer inside your mech. All is visible. So there's no hidden decisions or, gee, I think I'm in range, and then you find out in the shooting phase you're not quite in range. If you play on a hexless map where you're converting to kind of traditional old school wargaming measuring, which we do sometimes, that's part of the game itself. Sometimes you might be in range, sometimes you're not quite in range. But with a hex map, all of that is packaged really, really nice. The size of the hex map is also very, very interesting in that advantages and disadvantages, but things kind of balance out. And what I'm going to use to illustrate that is one of the things that I regularly like to play: archers, longbows, SRM carriers, putting down real-time 280 SRM shots, direct or indirect fire. Some warriors doing the scouting thing, some infantry, that type of stuff. And when we play in a very, very large table, certainly my units that have that are a little bit safer, right? I'm tucked in the back, I'm hidden behind something, and I can rain down the pain as needed. But one of the things that I notice on a large map, it's easier to avoid my missiles. It's easier to stay out of range. Now, tactics back and forth. If I plant my fire base in a place where you have to cross a certain area, or tactically that's the mission objective, it's going to pull you in. All that's true. But as we're navigating, you can just skirt the outsides, do the flanking thing, and avoid a lot of my shots. The advantage there is when you want to close on me, maybe because I'm firing on a certain area and you're advancing, it gives me more room to maneuver. Usually I put a Thunderbolt, T-Bolt, or some Demolisher tanks as bodyguards that you've got to pass through to get to my LRM base. I have somewhere to go. I can backpedal. I can maneuver. It's never a withdrawal. It's never a retreat. It's just a redeployment. When I play on the hex map, this kind of changes things a little bit. If I think about the standard pack-in Game of Armored Combat hex map, and I do think, and again, lots of different ways to explore and play Battletech, I think that's kind of a generalized reason why that hex map is defined. I don't think Battletech necessarily has a defined play area, say like other games I enjoy, God Tier or X-Wing Miniatures, where it's well defined in the rules. But I think the general consensus is this hex map pack-in that's kind of the standard size. Going back to my archers, my longbows, my SRM carriers, my opponent is in range sooner. It's easier to get you in range, and it's harder for you to avoid and staying out of that range because it's just the physical limitations, the reach of the hex map. I'm going to get you. But at the same time, it's easier for my opponent or you to close onto my fire base and counter that with some hard dice, some hard firepower. So I find that it's a little bit more binary yes or no in that, yeah, I'm going to range you. I'm going to have you. I'm going to start raining down those missiles directly or indirectly. But at the same time, you can make a tactical decision, take that or quickly close. So I think there's a little bit more balance. I think there's a little bit more said to having kind of that standard hex map versus a very large wargaming table, or maybe you link 3 or 4 hex maps. And again, that's going to be modified. I think that's standard for most games. But once you get to the higher battle value, 20, 30K, multiple lances, multiple support stuff, artillery, that's Battletech on a much, much more epic, greater scale. You need, absolutely, the bigger map. Now, turning it over to you, my fellow Battletech enthusiasts, mech warriors, mech commanders, mech techs, standard hex map size or standard size for Battletech. What do you think of large play areas or hex maps versus small play areas?